Welcome to Now We're Getting Somewhere. I'm Katie, and I'm a certified life coach, but I've also been a management consultant at McKinsey and a product manager at a tech startup. In other words, I know what it feels like to have a life that looks pretty good on paper, but doesn't feel as good as I want it to. I help my professional clients develop lives that are more meaningful, happy, and also more successful. And I want to share the same practical insights with you. Let's go. Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Recording this on a Tuesday. I am arriving during my rest week, which is my last week of the month when I record a lot of these podcasts. I just got back, I guess it's a Tuesday. I got back on Sunday from Newport Beach, where I was spending the weekend with family. We did a double header. We did a Passover Seder and a bunch of Easter stuff. It was so nice. A real Judeo-Christian weekend. One of my brothers hosted a Seder, which was so fun. We did an Easter egg hunt in their there's a neighborhood Easter egg hunt, which was really fun. And then the next day on Easter Sunday, one of my older brothers did this amazing scavenger hunt, Easter egg hunt at the house where he made all these clues for the kids because there's a bunch of cousins, and for the younger group, which was one of my boys and one of his cousins, he did these each of the clues were a drawing. So even though they couldn't read, they could look at the drawing and know where to go next. It was just a really wonderful family weekend. So I hope you're getting some of that too, if that's something you're wanting in this time of year. So with that kind of personal check-in, I'll get to our topic from today. So today I want to talk about how to reduce hours and stress when you're a leader while keeping work quality the same or frequently improving it. And I will say, even before we begin, there's often a lot of confusion about what I coach on. Clients say to me things all the time, or folks in consult say things to me like, "You don't really coach on this, do you?" And honestly, I coach on most things. I am a life coach. I am a generalist. And so if you're wondering, please try me, because I probably do coach on it. As part of, coaching my clients on their lives as a whole, again, I'm a life coach. I do coach on work a lot. And I realized recently that I have talked a fair amount about the individual element of my coaching on work. Helping yourself focus, even reducing stress and hours at work when you're an individual contributor. But I haven't talked as much about folks who lead and manage teams, even though I do have a decent subset of my clients who manage folks and they do lead teams. And I do coach quite a bit on that as well. So I was working recently, really this past week, with two different clients who are both leaders and managers, and I was giving them both very similar coaching. And whenever that happens, I tend to think to myself, I should really make a podcast about this. So I'm going to share what I shared with them. That's what this whole podcast is going to be about. But before I share that particular idea, I do just want to say, sometimes when people hear that I'm going to talk about leadership, they kind of get wigged out. They're like, "Oh, that's not for me. I'm not a leader." But I will say it may still apply to you. Maybe you lead or manage folks in some other area of your life, for example. So right now I'm thinking of a client who I just did a consult with, who's going to be starting with me in a couple months. She doesn't manage an official work team per se, but she does have a decent amount of folks who are supporting her in her life, like domestic help and assistant, things like that. And she's not yet leading them as effectively as she could. I can tell even just from the consult that we'll be talking about leadership and management with her as well. You might be leading folks as a parent. You might be leading folks in your volunteer work. So I'll just say I define leadership quite broadly, even if you don't have an official title as a manager. The episode and the ideas that I'm going to share today, I think, still apply to you. Okay, so the high-level lesson of this podcast is that if I find a client who is a leader and a manager, and they either want to increase the quality of their output or decrease stress and hours for themselves or their team, or do both, one of the most common opportunities I find for them is to take on developmental coaching of their team. I'm going to say that again. One of the lowest hanging fruits, the biggest wins for clients who are leaders and managers, is often to take on developmental coaching of their team. It's far from the only thing I work with leaders on. Some leaders are great at this already. Some organizations are great at this already. For those folks, it might be something else. But it's common enough that I thought it deserved its own podcast. So I want to do a few things today. First, I want to define developmental coaching. What do I mean when I say that? Second, I want to make my case. Why does it free up time? Why does it reduce stress for my leaders and for their team? And third, I want to give some common pieces of guidance that I have given my clients even in the last week if you would like to start doing some developmental coaching yourself. As always, I'm going to stick some personal stories in there, and then I'm going to stick some client stories throughout. So let's go. Okay, so first, as I said, I just want to share a definition of developmental coaching. Developmental coaching, to me, is coaching that is focused on a person's development. So as a leader, you're thinking, what is the skill that, if developed, would allow this person to contribute at a higher level to support their team and organization more effectively and help them be more likely to progress in their career? And then you're communicating that in a supportive and inspirational way to whoever you're managing. You're coaching them, likely over an extended period of time, to develop that skill. Certain skills that might come up in a developmental coaching conversation might be things like prioritization, delegation, how to organize complex problems, how to communicate in a clearer or more concise way, how to give feedback, how to deal with difficult stakeholders in useful ways. I'm using this term developmental coaching very precisely because I find that with my leaders, one of two things are often true. One thing that might be true is they're not really doing any coaching at all. This might be for a few reasons. Maybe they're just so focused on meeting the next deadline, responding to the next fire drill, that coaching seems too complex and time-consuming. Or they might be a little intimidated by coaching. Would they do it right? Would they offend their direct report? They're not sure they even have the skills to do that, so they kind of shy away from it. So that could be one thing. They're just not doing it at all. I have other leaders who are doing a bit of coaching, but it's more like they're giving feedback, maybe even developmental feedback, like, hey, you do need to delegate more, or hey, please don't criticize yourself so much. But it's kind of more in a one-off way. It's in the moment. It never seems to really seep in a significant way and change their direct report's behavior. Developmental coaching, of course, is truly what I do for my clients. I am often thinking about, what it would be supportive skills for my clients to develop. This is my actual profession, but you don't have to be a trained coach in order to do effective developmental coaching that your direct reports may remember and be moved by for their entire career. So that is a quick definition. That developmental coaching is just a form of coaching that's focused on skill development, and it's likely a longer-term process. So with that in mind, I want to make my case for why I end up talking to so many of my leaders about doing some kind of developmental coaching of their teams. And there's 5 reasons why I think it can be useful. 5, that's a lot. So here they are. First, it decreases work hours and stress for leaders. And I think that makes a bit of intuitive sense, right? Because the reason why the leaders that I work with are stressed, why they're working too many hours, is that either, number one, their team is not working as effectively as they could, or 2, the leaders themselves are taking on too many activities that they shouldn't be doing. They're taking on the activities of individual contributors or whoever is beneath them. And of course, those are often intertwined, right? A leader is afraid to give their direct report more work because they believe, perhaps rightly, that that person can't handle it or that their plate is already too full. So the only solution for that is your team needs to get better. And they need your help, your developmental coaching help, in order to get better. So that's the first reason why developmental coaching is so important, is that it can decrease your work hours and stress as a leader. Honestly, we could probably stop there. That's a pretty good reason, but I'll give you my other 4 ones because they're also really, really good reasons. The second one is developmental coaching can also decrease stress and work hours for the team. I think this is really important to remember because I think leaders can sometimes hesitate to do developmental coaching because they worry about maybe offending a direct report or overstepping. But I always try to remind them, it feels so, so good to be good at your job. Developmental coaching will help them work fewer hours without reducing quality and help them feel less stress. It is stressful to not be as skillful as you could be at your job. It feels good to be good at your job. That's a fact. You're doing them a huge favor. Which leads me to number 3. Developmental coaching has the potential to change this person's life. I'm going to say that again. Developmental coaching has the potential to change this person's life. I really mean that. So many folks stall out in their careers or never quite reach the potential they could because they don't realize a developmental opportunity that could make them work better and make work more fun for them while also improving output. You're helping them. I remind my leaders of this all the time, that the person they're coaching may remember this coaching if the coaching is given with genuine care and thoughtfulness for their whole lives. You have the power to do that. Which leads me to number 4, which is developmental coaching helps you become an inspirational leader. I'm going to give a little bit of a personal story here. When I was just a business analyst, so like an entry-level consultant at McKinsey, maybe a year and a half in, and the partner of the engagement that I was working on, so this person was like 3 levels above me, he scheduled a call with me and he said, "Hey, Katie, I think there's a developmental opportunity for you here on this project to really grow in your ability to build relationships with our client. I think you should find some folks on the client team who are an appropriate level." And then he gave me a couple suggestions, and go out to lunch with them, chat with them, build relationships. That's going to help our whole team. And that's a skill that will serve you, past this engagement. And honestly, whenever I reflect on this, I feel very moved by it, that this guy so far above me thought about me and took time to communicate that suggestion to me. It felt like he was really on my side. It felt like he wanted me to be better, and that he knew he could identify this way in which me being better would also help the team be better. And I'm going to be honest, it was a bit of an intimidating suggestion for me at the time. But I still think of him in a positive way. And I'm sure I was not the only person he did that for. That's the kind of leader that people remember. That's the kind of leader that people love to work for. So that's the 4th reason why I would recommend developmental coaching. The 5th reason is that it increases work quality. Maybe this is the most important point of all, but it does. How could it not? If your team is able to work more effectively, if they're less stressed and sharper because they're hopefully working less, work quality will be higher. And also, if you as a leader, because you're less stressed, because you're working fewer hours, are able to do what is your most important job, work quality will be higher. And I say that very particularly. I think as you progress in an organization, more and more, your most important job is to think, coach, and plan. Think, coach, and plan. It's actually a tagline I came up with working with one of my current clients, that her most important jobs are to think, coach, and plan. And of course, my client could not think and coach and plan if she's executing all of this random stuff because her team is overloaded and can't handle it. And of course, neither can you. And you know what's actually going to provide really high quality results? When you are doing strategic work, when you're thinking and planning. And the only way for any of us to have the capacity to do that is for your team to be more effective. So that's my case for developmental coaching. I think that's a pretty strong case. Okay, so hopefully you're bought in. Yes, I will do some developmental coaching of the people I manage, whether you manage one person or a huge team. Obviously, getting more skillful at developmental coaching is a huge topic. On some level, that's my entire career, but it also doesn't have to be wildly complex to get started and to actually be quite effective. So I wanted to share 4 suggestions that I've given to my clients recently as it's come up, as they're trying to do some more developmental coaching, and I hope it will help you too. The first suggestion I would give is think of this as a long-term project. Think of this as a long-term project. This is not going to be the kind of thing that you're going to mention once offhandedly in the moment. Like, James, it would really serve you to delegate more when you're talking about this big upcoming deadline at fire drill, and they're going to get it done in the future. I mean, occasionally that happens, but typically they won't. So you want to bring it up first in a moment when they can really take it in. You don't have to have no stress on your plate at the time. Some work environments are just perpetually stressful or busy. I just mean that you might want to do it during a one-on-one as a separate item, not in the context of some other meeting where you're thinking about, 16 other to-dos. You want to have a separate, thoughtful conversation about their development in particular. And then, given that it's a long-term project, you want to check in with it over time. Some of those check-ins could be in the moment. That's going to depend a lot on your style and on theirs, but certainly, for example, if they're working on being a clearer and more concise communicator, you might, stop them as they're updating you on something in future meetings, for example, and invite them to lead with the most important takeaway, for example. But it's also going to be something that you'll check in with intentionally over time, give them feedback on intentionally in one-on-ones over time. So that's my first idea. as you're considering, especially that initial conversation, but also throughout, that leads me to my second piece of advice, which is make sure that there's something in this for them. Make sure that there is something in this for them. The truth is, just about any developmental opportunity that you could find has something in it for them. Even if it feels selfish, like, you just don't want to listen to them, give you ideas in a really disorganized, lengthy way. Any developmental opportunity, if they really seize it, will lead to learning and growing, which will help them contribute to their team better, help them reduce stress and time, help them progress in their career. I have clients right now who are coaching their team members on things like delegation, prioritization, communicating in a more concise way, listening and integrating feedback better. These are all things that could be presented in a way that would cause someone to get defensive or shut down. But these are also things that could be presented as opportunities to grow and improve in their own life. So a huge part of that is on you to put the most positive, encouraging spin on it. That's in your control as a leader. So my suggestion to you is to make it really abundantly clear that you care about them and that there's something in it for them with this. My third piece of advice is that you will need to help them figure out how to implement this. I'm going to say that again. You will need to help them figure out how to implement this. Let's say that you've got them bought into this idea. They say, yes, I do need to delegate better. I do need to communicate more effectively. As I said, those are two issues that I have clients coaching folks on right now. Then this is where the real coaching happens. And I'm going to recommend 3 things when you're really coaching and helping them figure out how to do it. First, there may need to be a bit of a discovery process. You may need to ask them a lot of questions about what's going on that makes it so hard for them, and listen really carefully to discover why they're struggling with this skill. Because I can almost guarantee you that there are great reasons why they're struggling so much. So, for example, I have a client right now who manages managers. So the people she manages have teams of their own. And when she was coaching someone that she manages, she found out that this person who really did need to grow in her ability to delegate. Part of what was going on was she wasn't delegating because she didn't trust her own team members to get it done. And that was really important for my client to know, because then she had this opening to coach her direct report on how to coach that person's direct report. Like, what kind of structure does this person need to give her direct report? What kind of expectations? What kind of feedback? So that was part of the issue. And then my client also found that there was a prioritization issue here. So there was just genuinely too much work. That's part of why her direct report also wasn't delegating to her own team. So then my client could work with her on prioritization. So what started out as a delegation issue became helping that direct report grow in her own coaching skills, helping her grow in her prioritization skills. And that's so common. I mean, a huge part of coaching is just untangling that knot of what's going on and figuring out what the underlying problem is. It sounds so obvious when I state it like briefly here, but it's super tricky to see when you're at work and you're on deadline and you've got 14 urgent things, and it's really hard to see what you even need to work on. And the people you are coaching probably don't know what it is. So you need to help them figure it out. So that's my first piece of guidance about helping them figure out. The second thing I would say is you may want to end up giving them very concrete practices to try to practice this skill. And if you're a little newer to coaching, you might want to brainstorm what these practices could be in advance before you're in that feedback conversation. So for example, let's say you're trying to help them be concise and clear in communication. You might literally need to think to yourself before the meeting, okay, this is the practice I may suggest to them is to prepare before our meetings, to know the 1 to 2 sentence headline for every point and to know the 2 to 3 bullets under that. And you may or may not end up giving them that exact practice, because it might turn out when you're in that discovery process that there's something totally different that's actually causing their communication issues. But having that in your back pocket will help you if you end up having a chance to give them a more concrete practice to try this out. The third thing I will say as you're helping them kind of figure things out is that sometimes we all just need someone to hold our hands for a bit. So if you're trying to prioritize, you may need to go through their calendar and project list with them. If you're trying to help them delegate, you may need to talk through each and every one of their projects and sort of think through which ones do they want to keep, which ones do they delegate. They're going to have all these objections like, I can't give this to my direct report for this reason. And then you're going to have to help them figure out what to do in a way that doesn't jeopardize the project. It is okay to get in the weeds with them for a bit. You don't want to do that forever, but as they're learning, that can be an incredible use of time. And you, of course, want to be teaching them the skills, the methodology, so that you're not doing that forever. And of course, some of you are going to be thinking in your minds right now, like, the issue is that I'm totally slammed. I don't have time to be in the weeds with them. I get it. This is where, please hire me one-on-one. This is exactly what I'm figuring out with my clients in our sessions all the time. But just to give you some high-level ideas, that is what I would suggest. You probably do want to start with some sort of discovery. You want to prep in advance some tactical ideas or practices, and you may need to get in the weeds with them for a bit. Those are some ways to actually kind of get this coaching done. So that's my podcast. If you're a leader, if you want to reduce your stress in your hours, if you want to reduce your team's stress in hours while maintaining or increasing quality of work, you likely need to be doing perhaps significant developmental coaching. That's my case. Those are my suggestions for actually how to get it done. And if you remember nothing else, I hope you won't forget, you're not just doing this for you. You're doing it for them. You could change their whole life with caring, thoughtful, supportive developmental feedback. You could change the trajectory of their whole career by helping them identify and work on a blind spot or a skill or an opportunity that they just can't see. So I really hope that you will take this opportunity to act on their behalf, on your behalf and theirs. Until next time, everyone. Take care.
If you really want to change in a meaningful, lasting way, that's when you need a life coach. Every client I've worked with has had incredibly personalized reasons why they're in the tired or anxious or stuck or uninspired state they're in. Working with me can help you identify those roadblocks, which are usually blind spots that you genuinely cannot see, and implement a profoundly customized, doable plan for overcoming them. I have a very small, high-end, one-on-one coaching practice. If you'd like to be my next client, reach out at katiesiever.com. I'd love to meet you.